masaganang kaalamang umaga na naman po sa inyong lahat. Ako po ay nagbabalik. Ako po si Ronnie o Serfa. Nandito po tayo sa ating programa, Juan's Lab. Ngayong umaga po, napakaganda ng ating tatalakayin. No? Meron po tayong inimbitahan. So isa pong napakabuti kong kakilala, kaibigan, at sabihin natin, isa po ay rightful resource person dun sa tatalakayin po nating umaga. So i-share ko lang po ng konting time lang. So bakit po ito ang ating tatalakayin ngayong umaga. So ako po, bago po ako nakapagturo, so after ko pong makagraduate, nakapaglisensya ng engineering, so may license po ako ng engineer as ECE. So napunta po ako sa isang electronic or semiconductor firm. So nakapagtrabaho po ako dun sa firm na yon. I work there as a line leader, din napunta po as assistant supervisor. No? So yung trabaho ko po doon sa production. So I check, supervise yung production na ginagawa namin doon sa semiconductor. So pag sinabi natin semiconductor, ito yung mga electronic chips, electronic gadgets. So yung ginagawa po namin ay flex. So yung flex po, ito yung mga sa cellphone, sa laptop. So may circuit po yun ang napiflex. Ang gumagawa po nun, meron po kaming mga operator at the same time may mga machine din. So doon ko na-encounter yung mga term na tinatawag na bottleneck. So pag sinabi natin bottleneck, so may mga certain area na talagang napupuno. So nagkakaroon kami ng tambak doon sa area na yun. Nagkakaroon ng delay doon sa susunod na linya. Sa susunod na ipapasa namin kung saan yung production na yun. And then, doon ko rin narinig yung NG kasi it is a Japanese firm, no good sa kanila, yung mga defects. So pag sinabi natin mga defects, may mga errors. So doon ko nalaman yung human errors, even machine errors. So pag sinabi natin human errors, hindi lang basta sa tao. So anong klaseng tao yon? Normally, nakikita ko sa dalawang company na napasukan ko sa production, majority ng production worker are babae. So pag sinabi natin kasing babae, may nagkakaroon ng connotation na mood. So yung nagiging moody sila kasi meron silang monthly period, hindi natin maiiwasan yun. Those are actually natural for them. So doon habang gumagawa sila, iba yung mood nila. So nagkakaroon ng human error. Tapos may mga problema din sila sa family. For example, yung mga anak yun. So minsan ay idadala nila yun. So nagkakaroon ng human error. Doon sa machine naman, kasi machine yan, tumatakbo yan normally sa production ng 24 hours. So hindi natin minsan na-i-inspect. So nagkakaroon talaga ng mga problema. Kaya nagkakaroon ng mga errors. So tatalakayin natin ngayong umaga ang mga topics na ito, ang mga bagay-bagay na ito. Para kay Juan Dila, so magkaroon siya ng kaalaman. So ano ba itong importance ng ating tatalakayin ngayon? So ngayong umaga, we will discuss production planning and control. Magugulat kayo, ito pala ay napaka-importante, hindi lang basta sa production. Even actually sa buhay natin, makita natin how can we plan or manage our daily tasks, for example, kung saan man tayo nagtatrabaho. So makapagbigay kami ng konting kaalaman para kay Juan de la Cruz with the help of our guests. So yung bisita natin, pakilala ko lang siya briefly and then later on I will allow her to greet our audience, so si mga tagapakinig natin dito sa Juan's Lab. Siya po ay member ng Institute of Global Professionals. So doon po yung isa sa mga affiliation niya. Ganon din po ay isa po siyang member ng Scientific and Technical Research Association. Ganon din po ang Philippine Institute of Industrial Engineers. So magagulat kayo, Philippine Institute of Industrial Engineers. So may idea na kayo na industrial engineer ang ating bisita. So member din siya ng Operations Research Society of the Philippines. So gayon din po ang Network of Calabarzon Educational Institute. So kung na doon yung Calabarzon, connected siya doon sa area na yun, doon siya nagtatrabaho. So later on, ipapakilala natin kung saan siya nag-work. And then, alumni siya, dito ko siya nakilala, naging kaibigan ko na rin. So Adamson University Alumni Association. Siya po ay nakapagtapos ng Doctor of Philosophy in Technology Management sa Technological University of the Philippines. So currently, ngayon po, siya po ay professor in San Sebastian College, Recoletos de Cavite, sa College of Engineering, Computer Studies and Technology. So doon po connected ang ating bisita ngayon. So everyone, Juan de la Cruz, dito po sa Juan's Lab. Pinakapakilala ko po ngayon si Dr. JANNET M. ANIT. Siya po ay isang professional industrial engineer. Ma'am JANNET, bigyan ko kayo ng time para batiin ang ating mga tagapakinig dito po sa Juan's Lab.
Thank you so much, Doc Ronnie. Sir, magandang umaga po. Good morning po sa lahat ng mga tagapakinig, mga audience po ng Katipunan Channel, at lalo na po yung taga-subaybay ng Juan's Lab program ni Doc Ronnie. So good morning po sa inyo.
Maraming salamat, Ma'am Janet, sa tanggap ng aming imbitasyon. So from the Katipunan channel and also Once Love, kami po ay nagpapasalamat. So ano na natin, diretsuhin na natin yung huwag na nating paligoy-ligoy pa. So unang itanong kay Ma'am Janet, no? So sa una, at the same time doon sa huli, habang matapos natin yung hinandang PowerPoint presentation ni Ma'am Janet. Ma'am Janet, una kong tanong siguro before we proceed doon sa iyong ihandang PowerPoint presentation, no? Gaano ba ka-importante yung tinatawag na production planning?
Okay. So, before po kasi ako mapunta sa academe today, no, I was become a production planning and control planner po, no. Before, it started only with production planning and control with inventory. So, after 5 years po, nahiwalay si inventory. But then, I was retained as a planner. So, ano po yung pinaka-importante? So, I could still recall yung Japanese Costco would say that the production planning and control department is the heart of the company. Correct. So, bakit siya binawag na the heart of the company? Nung una, nagtataka pa ako, which is, I believe, no, after my 10 years as a planner, I believe that this is really very important. Kapag sinabi natin the heart, pag nawala si heart, definitely the company or the operation will stop. So, ang production planning control is definitely, it includes different activities, no? It includes before the production will start or actually begins, and then it will include also yung control. Kaya may kasama siya na production planning and control. So kasama dun sa planning is yung mga activities such as yung materials planning, so ano yung mga capacity planning, ano yung operations scheduling. So yun po yung first part, which is the planning. And then later, kaya ipinasok si control, which is for us to oversee naman ano yung actual production processes. Ano yung nangyayari, no? Ano yung nangyayari that for us as the employees will ensure, or the leaders, the managers will ensure ano yung ginagawa ng production team natin that somehow at the end will meet ano yung production targets, ano yung outputs natin in accordance with the schedule.
So, Ma'am Janet, pag sinabi nating production, no, kasi baka yung idea ni Juan de la Cruz pag sinabing production, gumagawa ng mga bagay-bagay yan, may output dapat yan. Pag sinabi ba nating production, hindi lang ba ito sabihin natin product? So, pwede bang sabihin natin system or output mo sa buhay, for example, o yung plan? Pwede ko bang gamitin yung principle ng production na yun sa ganong konsepto?
Yes, Doc, definitely. Kasi yung service, which is now that my current work, na-apply ko siya yung experience ko. And definitely, it's a two big different world, no, between the manufacturing industry where we are producing tangible product. And sabihin ko na, it's a Japanese house. So more on components, more on tangible raw materials compared to when I become engaged in teaching. What I'm doing is scheduling naman of the class schedule, faculty schedule, but somehow there is a big impact and influence of my experience previous because I need to first think ano yung priority ko. Okay? Ano yung oras ng mga estudyante ko at ng faculty ko that somehow could not be wasted with the schedule that I've done. So, may-utilize ko yung oras nila and araw nila for a period of 1 week. Same thing yon sa industry. You need to utilize yung time so it would not be wasted. So maraming klaseng ways, although it's different between the industry, manufacturing, and the services. But somehow, I could be able to say, no, in both this manufacturing industry and service industry, you could apply this and very useful this production planning and control. Somehow sa real life natin, daily life natin, we could be able also to apply it, no? Ano yung priority ko in the day? Ano yung kailangan kong activities to achieve within the day? And what would be my target?
Especially kayo, ma'am. You're not just only a professional, you're also a wife and also a mom.
Yes po, at the
So
same time,
yeah,
nag-aaral pa rin ako, Doc. So,
correct.
I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, and at the same time, I'm a student, and I applied it. How I am going to list down all the activities within the day. And then, at the end of the day, anong naging output ko? Naging
Correct.
effective ba yung scheduling ko with the things that I prioritize within the day? So, ganun din po siya, both sa industry. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, anong naging output mo? Yung bang plano mo na-achieve mo at the end of this period? So,
Correct.
yun po.
Actually, marami ako napupulot sa inyo kasi ma'am, nung na-handle ko kayo yung iba nating kaibigan. No? So, kasi magkaiba tayo ng profession. So,
Yes.
nagagamit ko yon yung every time that we have a discussion about this. So, nagagamit ko yung mga concept and idea na yon. Actually, it helps me a lot. Especially nung nag-aaral ako ng PhD. Kasi yung target, ano ba talaga yung target ko? So yung focus,
Yes.
I need to utilize my time and then not just only to focus my time doon sa work din. So meron din akong tinatawag na sarili, yung me time na sa atin. So kailangan alagaan din natin yung sarili natin. So maganda yung concept na naisip na ibabahagi. No? Si Ma'am Janet po ay naghanda ng sabihin natin, napakaikli lang ng PowerPoint presentation. Pero nung nirantro namin, napakaganda ng concept. So, papakita po namin yung concept, ginawa ni Ma'am Janet. So, nandito po, paano nga ba nag-start or nagsimula yung tinatawag na production planning and control? So, Ma'am Janet? I-ready lang po natin. Ayan po.
Okay po, so ito po yung aking maiksing presentation with the production control and production planning and control. So start po tayo with a brief introduction and ano po ba yung brief history nitong ating topic. So the first, hindi ko po masyado makita yung ano. Okay, sige po. So the first, the introduction is the first half of the 19th century the demand for information for internal planning and control apparently arise, and the production planning rapidly become one of the most vital necessities of the management. So during that time, no, in the first half of the century, nag-start na or it was developed already na po yung need in terms of informations and definitely around internal planning and control. So ito po yung mga companies or yung mga entities na nag-start, like yung mga railroads, yung mga textile mills, no. Ito po yung mga, even it's just a small factories, they still need ano yung mga necessary informations that will provide them ano yung framework, no? Ano po yung guidelines nila or ano yung mag-guide sa kanila for them to provide ano yung basic product or services that they have to schedule. Either it's just a small scale or a large scale. And then of course, during that time, no, factories definitely would have relative, even a small or it could be a limited number of products. So nagkaroon ng innovations or nagkaroon ng trend in terms of, syempre, yung ating technology nag-trend. So, by means of that, yung production line natin and manufacturing natin become bigger now. No, they become more complex. So, the reason why in the 20th or the beginning of the 20th century, the plants began to focus on not just delivering orders, but optimizing ano yung mga processes required, ano po yung mga involved production planning that was necessary. So doon mas nag-evolve, okay, mas na-enhance tong ating production planning because of the necessary informations that they need to incorporate, ano yung mga inputs that they need to prioritize, and what would be the output that is expected or ano yung objective niya.
Ma'am
So
Janet,
today, yes po.
Ma'am Janet, regarding dun sa beginning ng 20th century, dun sa they plan to begin actually yung sa minention nyo kanina, no?
Yes po.
Dun, so currently we're on the 20th century. So plan began focusing on not just only in delivering goods, So kasi yun naman talaga ang target natin makapag-output talaga
Yes
to
po.
provide it to our consumer, for example, yung mga customer natin, but optimizing the process. So kailangan ba pag sinabi natin yung goods tsaka yung process necessary ba talaga kailangan directly proportional? Pag sinabi natin directly proportional, so yung goods ko tumataas ang demands, tapos yung production process ko, so kailangan bilisan ko din. So meaning to say, yung production process ko kailangan taasan ko din o lakihan ko rin siya.
Definitely yes, Doc. No, we have to adapt with the demand of our customers. No, pag sinabi nating demand, it's not just the needs and wants, but somehow later their expectations that will satisfy. So kaya nag-evolve, nag-innovate si production planning and control because of the innovations and because of the complex demand of our customers. So kailangan makakasabay po tayo doon, not just the quantity, but both the quantity and the quality, so that at the end, after the products or the services experienced by the customers, they will be happy because they are satisfied.
Opo. I heard that you said the quality and also satisfaction, kasi importante yun So paano man pumasok yung term na, unahin ko muna siguro itanong, ano yung difference na tinatawag na, kasi nung nagtatrabaho nga ako dati sa production firm, so, manufacturing din yun, tsaka it's owned by a Japanese. Doon ko narinig yung quality control, QC nga yung tawag nila
Yes,
then QA, quality assurance. Ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng dalawa? Kasi I heard that you said quality and yung satisfaction. So nandoon yung assurance ko as a consumer ng product na yan. At the same time, on your side, dun sa manufacturer, yung control. So ano yung difference muna, Ma'am Janet, ng dalawa?
Okay. Yung quality control po is mostly direct siya dun sa process. So they are into controlling what would the standard quality that they expect at the end of the process. So doon pumapasok po yung mga policies, mga guidelines, procedures, work instructions that they have to closely monitor if this area or this particular operator are following. Then ang quality assurance naman is definitely mas malaki yung saklaw niya po. Okay? So mas malaki yung cover niya in the organization. So they are into implementing different programs and activities that definitely involve yung quality control. So they are into more on documentations, auditing, internal and external auditing. So they are more on into trainings, yung different tools po for them to be able to use in the quality control. So different documentations po. So sila yung nagpapacilitate with this different area or units na nagpapacilitate ng quality control.
So napakaganda nung naibahagi ni Ma'am Janet. Actually, even ako kasi na-experience ko, tanong ko pa rin yan, yung coverage ng assurance sa quality assurance sa quality control. And then I heard that you said the internal and external audit. Ang target naman kasi normally ng auditing, yung sinabi kasi auditing, nagbibigay agad tayo ng tip mag-audit kami. So which is mali ba yun na sige dapat ba ang audit randomly done or hindi talaga siya yung term na unannounced para talagang malaman natin dun sa production na sinusunod yung sinabi niyong na flow o yung process ng isang production?
Actually, Doc, pag sinabi nating either internal or external, it's usually scheduled Kasi may specific activities ka that you have to follow. So, ino-orient, Hindi siya dapat hindi sinasabi or unannounced na hindi pwede. So, either it's internal or external. So, it should be announced, it should be oriented, It should be disseminated kasi andito yung list so that everybody in the organizations could be able to prepare. So preparations of documents, no? Yun po yung
Ma'am
mga
Janet, pag
kailangan.
sinabi nating unannounced or hindi dapat random, pag sinabi natin bukas mag-audit kami, parang bukas lang din sila or a day before normally they do the cleaning. Kasi na-experience ko yun eh. Kasi ang dami ko ding napasukan na iba't ibang klase, nasa academe, nasa production, nasa manufacturing,
Yes,
or even nasa research and development. Pag sinabi kasi tomorrow we're going to have an audit or merong normally kasi external eh. So parang hindi talaga within dun sa company. So, preparation kasi.
Alam ko yung sinasabi niyo, Doc.
A
Siguro
day before, a few days before the cleaning, and then they prepare the documents, etc.
Opo.
Wherein, on my side, nakikita ko kasi na-train ako properly dun sa ganong sistema. May mali dun sa system na ganon.
Yes po, opo. Well, siguro, Doc, yung experience mo, I experienced that siguro yung auditing when it comes to 5S, yung cleaning, di ba? When we heard, oh, may nag-audit, or kahit hindi nila sabihin sa atin, when we heard to other department na nag-audit sa kanila. So, the tendency, magpe-prepare tayo, which is, I think, it's not really correct, no? We should be able to prepare and always anytime, every day of the day, like for example, the 5S, it's a culture, it's a daily habit, no? Correct, sa atin na siya dapat. So, yun yung sample ko na hindi siya dapat talaga. Well, the rest of the auditing should not be like that. Every time lang na that we will heard na merong schedule ng auditing, doon lang tayo magpe-prepare, i-update, i-revise yung ating mga documentation, work instruction. So, hindi siya dapat ganun.
So dapat andun na sa system o culture o yung norms, yung tinatawag na norms talaga. So dapat ma-instill na kung sino man yung naka-assign dun sa ganitong production, sa ganitong area para yun yung actually gusto nating maibahagi kay Juan de la Cruz yung discipline.
Yes po. Opo.
So dapat ma-instill yung discipline that we have to follow this, yung term na culture o yung norms na ito dapat ang susundin natin na flow para kasi ang target naman talaga ni production planning and control yung ma-minimize ang waste. Pag sinabi kasi natin yung waste, yung raw materials, hindi masasayang. Even sa pagluluto kung magluluto ka, hindi dapat masisira, hindi ka magtatapon. Even dun sa oras din natin, hindi dapat tayo magkaroon ng waste of time na tinatawag. So dapat magkaroon tayo talaga ng properly yung planning, yung control dun sa buong system. So thank you, Ma'am Janet, dun sa pagbabahagi ng ganong information, lalo na dito kay Juan de la Cruz. So ipagpapatuloy po ni Ma'am Janet kasi may mga term tayo na gustong ibahagi, tinatawag na production planning, ano ba yung production control, ano ba yung production planning and control. So Ma'am Janet?
Okay po. So yung next slide po will be the introduction of ano po ba yung production planning and production control. Although at the first question of Doc Ronnie, medyo nabahagi ko na po siya. So production planning is the process of deciding how a product or service will manufacture before the manufacturing process begins. Pag sinabi naman natin production control, it's the guides that directs the flow of the production so that the products are manufactured in the best way and conform to a planned schedule and are at the right quality. So again, when we say production planning, it's usually handle those activities before the production actually begins or start. So ito po yung mga materials planning, capacity planning, operations scheduling. And then when we say naman production control, ito naman po yung will look on and all will oversee what is the actual production process. Ano ang nangyayari? No, ano ang ginagawa ni production team for us to be able to meet ano yung production targets natin and the operating according to the schedule na sinet natin. So definitely po itong production control and production planning is determined as the requirements for our human or our operators, our materials, equipment, machineries, and tools. So arranging these all resources in the production schedules in accordance to the needs of our market or the needs of our customers. So the inputs at the right time and in the right quantity to make the most economical use of these different or various inputs. So ito po yung main use or the purpose objective of this production planning and control. Next
So
slide.
parang ito Ma'am Janet yung pinaka-backbone mismo ng buong
Yes,
system.
opo.
Na, without this, sabihin natin mawawala lahat ng proseso, ng flow ng
Yes,
production. So napaka-importante pala talaga ng term ng production planning and control. Thank you Ma'am Janet. So next po.
Next slide po with the objectives of the objectives of the production planning and control. So yung kanina po, it's the overall or general objective. Now, I have 5 different objectives. Number 1 is continuous flow of the production. So pag sinabi natin continuous flow, so definitely ang ating primary objective in our production planning and control is to have a continuous flow through the production facility. So we could be able to check on what would be the process improvement, which is one of the integral concept po ng overall production enhancement. So ano yung production planning and control that will attempt to achieve yung smooth and continuous production process. So by eliminating, kanina na-mention po ni Doc Ronnie, is the bottleneck. No? Example po nun is, for example, lack of supply of raw materials. So doon po mapasok yung case na lack of yung long queuing. So that's one. Then another is, I mentioned a while ago yung mga waste. So ano ba yung maraming waste po? I usually discuss 16 waste or 8 waste, no? Pero I would mention about inventory waste because it's something to do with the raw materials that I mentioned with bottleneck also. So either overstock or it could be yung lack of stock, no? So both of this could contribute an additional cost in the part of the company. So waste could also be in terms of motion, in terms of waiting, that again, it would add additional cost. So ito yung mga activities po that doesn't contribute or doesn't add value. So it's just additional cost on the part of the company. So the second one is the planned requirement. So ito naman po yung the production planning component of a production planning and control is very essential in terms of production facility. So the needs, no, and the right amount at the right time. So having a production plan that would ensure the company that there would be enough materials, no, I mentioned a while ago, the tools, equipment, machineries, manpower that would perform the work in the specific period of time based dun sa schedule na ginawa natin. Then number 3, optimal inventory levels. So inventory is often considered to be sometimes a wasteful within the manufacturing operations, but then it is still very important. No? Inventory related costs, some of those are largest incurred for many operations, no? That is why ang aim po ng planning and control is to reduce also. Kaya nga po nung sabi ko sa inyo sa start, no, before my experience is partner si planning and inventory. So connected silang dalawa para silang magkapatid. Kaya lang siya naghiwalay. The reason is lumaki kasi yung production. So they needed to separate both of this department. But then yung coordination with these two are very important. So yung levels kasi ng inventory. So meron po kaming tinatawag o meron, I know aware po si Doc na yung JIT na tinatawag, no? So yung just in time. This is for us to be able to have the minimum amount of inventory on hand to meet the demand. So hindi dapat sumobra yung quantity, hindi rin dapat kulang. Kasi both of this scenario would add additional costs. Then number 4, increase productivity. So it is another substantial objective within the production planning in a sense that to have an increase in terms of productivity through efficient enhancement while we are also into economical naman po. So we increase productivity that somehow successfully achieved through optimizing ano ba yung use of the existing production resources that we've mentioned. And then ano yung mga labor resources while we are into eliminating yung mga waste and yung mga bottlenecks that we mentioned. Hindi lang siya sa materials. And then number 5 po is customer satisfaction. Na-mention ko na rin po siya kanina. Definitely, it's one of the aims of the company that we could be able to have customer satisfaction. So definitely, it would driven the customers and happy customers means more business po yun sa atin in the future. So having defective products or services definitely would have a delays in terms of shipment, no? So it could result to harm to our company. So production planning and control focuses primarily in ensuring what the manufacturing process will successfully complete, no, the orders on time, and then reducing po yung lead time.
Correct, correct.
Next
Ma'am
slide.
Janet, ano ko lang bago tayo mag-proceed dun sa next slide, no? Dun sa hinanda mong PowerPoint. Yung kanina dun sa production, yung just in time. So mali ang perception ni Juan de la Cruz na so kailangan bumili ako ng materials. So mag-iipon ako ng mga raw materials, especially lalo na pag magpapasko, yung mga Christmas decors or sabihin natin yung mga orders na lang ng online selling ng mga pagkain or cakes. Kasi yung mga raw materials nun, may expiration. So halimbawa yung flour, bumili ako ng maraming flour. Mura yung flour, bumili ako ng iba ko ng maraming flour. So may expiration yon. Tapos konti lang yung demands. Pag sinabi natin konti lang yung demands, konti lang yung umorder.
Yes,
so sabihin naman natin, dumama yung orders, marami akong flour, pero hindi ko naman na-perceive, for example, yung stock ko ng sugar. Yes. So hindi balance. So nagkakaroon pa rin talaga ng bottleneck kahit mag-imbak ako lang ng maraming components or maraming raw materials. At the same time, kung hindi naman enough, so nagkakaroon talaga ng bottleneck. So kailangan talaga yung importante talaga na binigay niyo yung planning. So nandoon talaga yung importante ng planning. At the same time, yung pang-counter check nun, yung control. Pag sinabi natin i-control ko, hindi yung just in time number 1, yung oras ng delivery, yung movements ng tao na tinatawag. So importante. So napakaganda talaga ng partnership ni planning and control. So thank you for that, Ma'am Jai. Gusto ko lang kasi i-share yung importance na ibahagi nyo dun sa 5 important things sa planning and control. So thank you po.
Yes po. So proceed po tayo with the main functions of the production planning and control. So next slide po. Okay, so I divided it into 2, no, planning and control. So under planning po, there is estimations or estimating. So ano ba yung estimating? So once the overall method and the sequence of operations would be fixed, so yung process sheet for each operations would be available, then that's the time that we could be able to estimate. So the function is carried by using yung mga extensive analysis po of the operation. So along the methods of routing and the standard time. So dito po pumapasok yung sa IE po is what we call the work study and measurement. So yung work study and measurement, just to give you the idea of this is, ito po yung we could come up with the standard time of each process and then complete the process of what we observe, and then plus those different allowances. Kasi syempre may tao po tayo dun napapagod yan, nauuhaw yan at kailangan yan mag-CR. So those are the different allowances, no, yung mga basic fatigue allowances that we have to include. So that's one in terms of establishing using work measurement techniques. Then number 2 is the process planning, o yung na-mention ko, it's the routing. So under this operation, so the path and the sequence are being established. So this time naman po, we need to perform the operations in the proper class. So for example po, class of machines. We also considered ano yung mga personal requirement natin for us to work out the operations. And then the ultimate goal for this is to determine what would be the best, cheapest sequence of the operation. So we could be able to ensure ano ba yung mga sequence that are strictly followed and which are not followed. Kasi doon yung nagiging cause ng variations of the output. And that's the cause bakit tayo may defects na tinatawag, or yung tinatawag na sa audit is non-conforming. So hindi siya nag-conform with the quality standards that's set by the company. Okay, next po is the scheduling. So ito naman po, it means that the working out of the time that should be required to perform each operation. So The time is necessary to perform the entire series or yung routed, making the allowances na na-mention ko po kanina as factors of concern. So mainly ang concern po natin dito is with the time element, no? Ano yung priorities natin? Ano yung priorities job? So parang yung kanina example ko in our life daily activities, ano yung priority natin? Ano yung uunahin natin? So the pattern of scheduling differs from one job to another. So marami pong factors yon. So one is we have to consider yung physical plant facilities, yung personnel who will handle or who will possess the desired of the skills, as well as yung mga necessary materials and other purchase materials po or parts. Then next is loading. So ito naman po, the next step is ito na yung execution nung ating na-schedule, no, based on the schedule plan as per route or check out in the that includes in the assignment of the work of our operators, no? It could be yung machines then and then the workplace. So loading is the term means who will do the work in terms of routing that determines, no? Ano yung schedule and then how this order would be delivered, and then existing load also to foresee how fast a job can be done. So, dun po tayo. And then next is sa production control naman po tayo. So, meron tayong number 1, dispatching. So, ano naman yung dispatching? Usually, it involves po yung issue of the productions orders, no, for starting the operation. So, ano yung necessary authority and confirmations given for the movement of the materials. So, very important siya yung movement of the materials, the tools, pictures that are necessary for each operation. So beginning of the work on each operations, and then definitely recording of the time and the cost involved in each operation. Next one is the follow-up. So definitely every organizations, every productions program involves, no, determinations of ano yung progress ng ating work. Ano yung mga actions natin, corrective actions and preventive actions for us to remove ano yung mga bottlenecks and waste, no, for us to ensure that our productivity operations are in accordance to the plans. So it usually spots or sees yung mga delays or mga deviations from the productions plan. So it would help po sa company to reveal ano yung mga defects or defects in terms of scheduling and routing. So minsan yung scenario of misunderstanding of the orders, yung mga misunderstanding of the instructions, yung mga underloading, pwede rin naman pong overloading of work. So ito yung mga real scenario na nangyayari that we have to avoid. And then number 3, yung inspection. So for us to avoid yung mga misunderstanding, so it is a major control tool, no, through the aspect of yung kanina na mention po natin, yung quality control, to ensure that the quality is really comply with the standards of the quality. So this is very important po sa PPC or production planning control. So both in terms of execution, no, of the current plan, as well as yung how do we project or to scope yung future planning. So this is very important, the inspection. So papasok yung kanina na tinawag nating si QC as well as the QA. Correct. So number 4 is evaluations and corrective actions now. So through the analysis of all the factors, no, influencing, yung na-mention ko po kanina with the planning and control. So it would help po to identify the weak spots, no, yung weak area, and then we will come up with a corrective action as well as the preventive action. So it will not happen again. So in respect to pre-planning, or it could be yung ating forecasting, no, o yung ating forecasted plan. So it is very important. So ito po yung functions.
Thank you, Ma'am Janet, no. Ano na tayo. Tayo lang yung mag-iimbita sa dito po sa Katipunan channel. Kami po ay muling nag-iimbita sa panonood ng aming programa. So lalo na po dito sa Juan's Lab. Ang Katipunan channel po ay meron po siyang Facebook page at gayon din po meron din po siyang YouTube account. So please check our Katipunan channel. Marami po kayong mapapanood na programa doon. Pwede pong pangkaalaman tulad po nitong Juan's Lab, may pang agrikultura, may pang medical, even for politics. So ito po ay inyong please follow our Katipunan channel. Gayon din po ang aming Facebook and YouTube account. So please like, share, and subscribe para maging updated po kayo sa mga palabas namin. Gayon din po ang Once Lab, meron po siyang Facebook page. Kung meron po kayong gustong matalakay dito po sa ating programa, kami po ay nakahandang tugunan ang inyong nais na maibahagi po dito or ating alamin dito po sa Once Lab. So maraming salamat po. Ipagpatuloy po natin ang ating talakayan with Ma'am Janet. So narinig ko kay Ma'am Janet yung next na didiscuss niya yung tinatawag na production planning and activities. Ma'am Janet?
Okay po. So proceed po tayo sa production planning activity. So it is divided. Next slide po. So it is okay. So divided po siya into 4, the capacity planning, aggregate planning, and then the master production scheduling and short-term scheduling. So proceed po agad tayo with the capacity planning. So next slide po. Okay. Capacity planning is the process of determining the resource required to meet the priority plan and the methods needed to make the capacity available. So it takes place in each level of the priority planning process. And also capacity control is the process of monitoring production output, comparing it with the capacity plans and taking corrective actions when needed. So ito po yung example is the equipment procurement. So ito yung process of finding and purchasing the tools that your company needs to operate effectively. So it determines the load of each work center in each time period. So ito po yung sinasabi ni capacity planning. So it's usually translate yung priority plan into the number of hours required for each work center in each time period. Then next po is the aggregate planning. Next slide po. So ang aggregate planning naman is concerned with determining the quantity and the scheduling of the productions for a mid-term future. The timing on the aggregate planning runs normally from 6 months to 18 months, or it could be 1 year. Aggregate planning seeks the best combination to minimize the cost by matching the supply and demand of the output over the minimum time range, generally for the next 12 periods. So usually, ang inputs po natin dito sa aggregate planning will determine ano yung demand of each period. That's one. Second is, ano yung capacity of each period, ano yung policies that are pertinent, ano yung determine the units of cost. And then after that input, we have to analyze, no? Papasok si analysis for us to develop ano yung alternative plans and costs and select what will be the best plan that will satisfy our objectives. Next slide po. So let's move on with the master production scheduling naman. So ito po yung plan for the productions of individual end items. It breaks down the production plan to show for each period and the quantity of each end item to made. So it describes the process of developing a master production schedule, and the term master production schedule is the end result of this process. So usually, ang MPS po is determine what is the quantity, the timing of the completion, and the end items over yung short-range planning horizon. So usually po, this is to schedule the item. So ano yung mga finished goods, parts, ships, and end items to be able to complete promptly and with, of course, with the time that we promise to our customer. So added also is to avoid ano yung mga overloading or underloading in the production facility. So ito po yung purpose ng master production scheduling. So next slide po. Then short-term scheduling naman. So ito po yung short but precise scheduling concerned with the allocations of limited resources to task over time. So it is usually related to the range of the next coming days, or it could be shift. So operations to be scheduled are the base of many industrial scheduling system. So ito naman po, it deals with timing of the operations into short-run focus. So usually per hour po, or hourly, daily, weekly. So ito rin po yung sequence in terms of determining ano yung order in which jobs are processed. And also to determine the jobs, the processing jobs at work that centers, no, but also the process of individual per station. Okay, so next slide po. Okay, So the types of production planning. So we have 5: flow method, mass production method, process productions, and the job production planning, and the batch production planning. So isa-isahin po natin ang mabilis. So number 1, flow method. So ito po yung involves the smoothing the connections between the manufacturing stages and step to prevent bottlenecks or delays. So ito po yung it usually involves po yung thorough standardizations and intensive quality control. So this method is usually po best for the items that have to produce one at a time rather than yung batches po. So it doesn't require po yung customized design for each product, and then planning is flow production. So it is very important po to keep the inventory in mind to avoid yung delays and any stages of bottleneck. So ang magandang example po siguro nito sa company is those like car manufacturing po. No, they usually into estimations of how many car, let's say per week ang ginagawa nila, no. They have to produce, let's say, ano yung plan nila of how many employees ang kakailanganin nila, what are those steps, trainings, and the skills, no, that they have to require for them to comply or to finish yung weekly output. Next is the mass production method. So ito naman po, it's almost the same with flow method. It's just that it's usually includes po yung more automations, no? Yung lines that are usually devoted po in producing one product to produce time needed for changeover. So siguro ang magandang example po natin ito since per batch is like manufacturing of toys. So wherein the company could be able to identify ano yung mga potential steps, no? Ano yung mga calculations in terms of delays, costs that might considered in terms of market research, no? Kailangan ma-identify nila to in terms of their creations ng proposal, how many employees ang needed for them to comply yung batch nitong, for example, these toys, no? Or this design of toys. Then number 3 is process production naman. Ito naman po, usually it involves yung making transition from one manufacturing stage to another. So this is for us to have as smooth as possible in significant automation. So siguro ang example natin nito is yung mga let's say yung mga substance or yung mga chemical substance na product, no? Kasi usually po they are into process of productions in terms of significant monitoring to make sure yung product would comply with the standard of each stage. So doon po yung pwede natin siyang gamitin. Then the fourth one is the job production planning. So ito naman po, it refers to the process that involved specific planning and manufacturing for each item. So ito po yung tinatawag natin na project-based production. So usually customized siya. So siguro ang magandang example po natin dito is yung mga building materials o kaya mga furniture, no, wherein merong intensive yung or highly skilled yung labor with this kind of product. And then the last one is the batch production planning. So ito naman po yung process of manufacturing items in a group, no? Kaya po siya batch. So it allows us for close management for each stage of the process. So may quick corrections, no, since usually ang error madali nating nanonotice per batch, but then it could be fixed immediately on the next batch. So siguro ang maganda nating gawin dito, yung example kanina ni Doc Ronnie na yung halimbawa nagbe-bake tayo ng cake. So makikita natin, no, ano yung list of standards, ano yung mga materials and the specific quantity na kailangan natin with the ingredients or the materials. Then of course, ano yung sometimes yung mga mistakes, no, yung mga wasting process time that at the end of the day or the week, ilan yung na-create nating cake, for example.
Okay. Ma'am Janet, may question lang ako regarding dun sa types of production planning. So kanina napag-usapan natin dun sa brief introduction na hindi lang naman talaga to sa production, sa manufacturing, that we can actually apply into different settings, especially to our lives, to our what type of work that we have. Curious lang ako dun sa presentation ng types of production planning. Can we apply which one of these sa government scenario?
Yes, definitely, Doc. We could apply it. Siguro depende kung ano yung service that we
Correct. So
provide with.
maybe it depends for what particular department. No? So
Yes
siguro yung,
po.
yeah, okay. Maganda sigurong ma-check nila. Halimbawa, I don't want to mention what particular department. It's just a case-to-case basis. But
Opo.
if we going to apply maybe one of these dito sa 5, it might help ba dun sa natin sa system ng government implementation natin?
Yes, definitely, Doc. Could I mention one? So siguro probably yung with regards to the applications of our renewal in LTO. So we need to determine, no, since they could be able to forecast, may system tayo
Correct.
Who are those that are here number of na kailangan magpa-renew. So yung kaya di ba may time na I think regardless of may pandemic, although alam natin malaki yung impact nun, we could be able to project na, okay, these are the number of the people na magpaparenew sa akin.
Correct.
Yung driver's license lang yun, Doc. Paano pa yung ating kotse na kailangan natin?
Correct. So, yun ang gusto ko actually mapatarget kasi tayo ay nagre-renew ng lisensya natin. So, hindi lang not just only sa sabihin natin sa driver's license. So, yung lisensya natin, for example, sa PRC at nagre-renew din tayo minsan ng passport. So, dapat napopercy na nila in this year, sabi natin 10 years na kasi yung expiration ng passport, for example. So, halimbawa, nag-apply ako ng passport in 2010. So, dapat magre-renew ako yung around ng 2020. So, dapat napopercy na nila. Kung 2010, sila, mataas ang production o marami nag-renew, dapat in 2020, maporsila nila yun, maraming magre-renew or maraming at plus may mag-a-apply lang new passport. So yun yung gusto kong system na malaman ni government din.
Yes.
No, maganda, ma-check nila that example din doon sa driver's license, which is very important. Kailangan ma-foresee na nila na ito yung scenario, ito yung forecast ko for this particular year or day. So napakaganda nung na ma-check nila tong system ng production planning. So
plus to add, Doc, they could be able to prepare kasi di ba we have yung card, di ba, na naubusan sila. So they could be able to prepare, no? Since ito yung dami, so kailangan natin mag-prepare ng resources in terms of cards. So, yung delay nagdoble na tuloy.
Correct. So, napakaganda nung na-share natin, Ma'am Janet. Thank you so much for Ma'am Janet. So, Ma'am Janet, next po natin.
Okay, so let's continue po after the 5 different types of production planning. So, let's move on with the importance po. No, with the importance of production planning and control. Although I gave already the general. So, number 1 is importance po. Next slide po. Number 1 is for co-coordinating planned activity. So definitely po, production planning helps controlling the planned activities as I mentioned a while ago. So what are the targets in terms of the basis for the sales, for the forecast, as well as the raw materials, operators, equipment, and then definitely we could be able to arrange by keeping a view production plans. So different production activities in services are also could be able to adjust per plan, depends on the demand of the product or the services. So if the production could be able to carried out in the number of the processes and their activities into a synchronized for smooth working. Then number 2 po, it helps in controlling various costs. So I mentioned also a while ago, in the absence of the proper production plan, so idleness of the man, materials, equipment, and that may not be noticed. So it could result to additional costs, additional or added non-value added in our operation. So properly planned system of the production will help in terms of controlling the costs, not only in terms of making full utilizations of the various inputs, but para din po to increase yung output and definitely lowering yung overhead expenses per unit. So number 3 po is for rationalizations of the production activity. So ito naman very important in terms of the objective of regulate yung flow of the various inputs into production system to run it smoothly. it also for us to have the standard to follow in a routine and substandard products or services that are sometimes discarded or just ignored in the process. So it is the process of entering of raw materials and other sources, converting it into the finished product or service. And then the fourth one, the last one is consumer. The consumer is ensured good quality goods. So ito naman po is will help in raising quality standards of the product. So ano yung mga supply of goods, no, in terms of also from and customers that has not been waited, no, for us to deliver. So schedules also, and then definitely yung ating mga schedules of supplies. And then I think this would be the last one, Doc. It's the guide, no? It's the guide for the production planning and control. So I just choose 5, no? One is to inspect the process. So this is monitoring of the production, very important. So no matter how big or small yung scale ng business natin, so it is very important. It will help the organization to understand where they could help the employees and make the process more efficient. Number 2, select the right tools. So there are many options. There are many statistical tools, IE tools, different tools that could help production planning. So may mga software na rin tayo or mga system that could help, no, with our operations to evaluate ano yung different, to evaluate and analyze ano yung current situation. And then research, number 3, for the correct estimation. So research could help in planning process for any product or system. So even if we are too familiar with the item itself, so important pa rin po to estimate how much things are cost, and then how much time the task take, and what is the exact equipment that you need for the crucial for good production planning. Then number 4, consider the employees. So while we are into optimizing different production resources for efficiency and definitely for profit, so we have to consider what working on the line is like for our employees. So we make sure to consider the factors that would have enough time for the equipment, maintenance, for their breaks, and even yung social interactions, no? And definitely yung kanilang training and safe environment. And then number 5, hire for skills. So when we are into developing new products or lines, so we might be able to increase ano yung product of quality. So we have to hire for this higher skills, or we have to have the training, no, by considering ano yung skills that they needed for them to adjust and to adapt ano yung new jobs natin, for them also to prepare ano yung employees that will fill it the process. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Ma'am Janet. No, actually, medyo nabitin pa ako dun sa allotted time natin sa discussion kasi napakarami kong gusto ibati na question, but because of the limited time, I hope in future or in other platform, no, ma-invite din ka namin or ni Juan de la Cruz sa ibang event, for example, na maganda ma-elaborate pa natin ng mabuti itong tinatawag na production planning and control. So on our side, Ma'am Janet, sa Juan's Lab kami po ay nagpapasalamat sa pag-render ng iyong precious time, lalo sa pagtanggap ng aking invitation dito sa ating programa. Gayon din po, kami po ay nagpapasalamat mula sa Katipunan Channel, and then kami po ay nagpapasalamat din sa ating station technician, si Sir Ver Archivido, ganon din po ang aming station manager, si Ma'am Kati Cruz, at gayon din po ang aming chairman dito po sa Katipunan Channel, Sir Professor Butch Valdez. So kung meron po kayong nais na suggestion, recommendation, kami po dito sa Juan's Lab at sa Katipunan Channel ay nakahanda po na tanggapin ang inyong mga kuro-kuro. Ang gusto ko lang maibigay na impart doon sa discussion natin kay Juan de la Cruz, sabi nga natin time is gold. So importante na yung term na marami tayong lagi natin narinig yun, time is gold. But if we have the plan, so planuhin natin ng mabuti ang mga bagay-bagay, lalo na rin din sa sarili natin, yung mga activities natin. And then, we need to control. So number 1, hindi lang basta yung sinasabi nating materials, yung expenses natin din ay napaka-importante. Yung oras na ibinahagi natin, kontrolin natin kung naglalaro kayo, nag-games kayo, so we need to have this control. I-manage natin yung mga activities natin sa buhay, hindi lang basta sa production. So Ma'am Janet, kami po ay nagpapasalamat. So maraming salamat po. Ako pong muli si Ronnie o Serfa. Kita-kita po tayong muli sa susunod na Martes, alas 11 ng umaga bago po kayo mananghalian dito po sa Once Lab. Maraming salamat po.